Namaste. On behalf of the Hindu Temple Society of North America, the New York Ganesh Temple, it is my pleasure to warmly welcome you to Akshayam's 50th Hinduism Learning Series. It's a very exciting session for us. Here to talk about a very important topic, I'd like to invite Dr. Purna Prasad, who serves on the board of our temple, the Hindu Temple Society of North America. So without further ado, I'd like to pull in Dr. Purna Prasad. Welcome. Namaste.
Namaste. Hello, Rami. Hello, everybody.
Hello, how are you? So we'll start with an invocatory prayer, if that's okay.
Sure. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Jayati Parashara Sonuhu Satyavati Hridayanandano Vyasaha Yasyasya Kamalagalitam Vangmayam Amritam Jagat Pibati Bhujaga Bhoga Bamudyamya Hridyam Nijabhujam Dakshinam Lakshanadyam Lalitamudrikta Vignanamudram Bhaja Bhaja Anantamitya Alapantam Pranatavan Praninam Pranabhutam Pranatibhi Prinaye Purnabodham Bhavadavoshnena tatapyamanan bhuvi param natham aprekshamanan bhuvanamanyena chanyena doshna bhavatu bhirma iti nassantvayantam pranatavan praninam pranabhutam pranatibhi prinaye purnabodham Narayanam Suragurum Jagadekanatham Bhaktapriyam Sakalaloka Namaskritam Chatraigunyavajjitamajam Vibhumadhyamisham Vande Bhavagnam Amara Surasiddha Vandyam Narayanam Namaskritya Naranchaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Narayanaya Sarvam Shri Krishnarpanamastu Guru Govinda Namo Namaha. Hello.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Purna Prasad, for that introductory prayer. And we want to welcome you again, as I mentioned, to our 50th Akshayam Hinduism Learning Series. So it's been a little over 4 years since we started. So many topics we've explored that range from practical application of temple worship and ritualistic practices to the importance of using vibhuti, kumkumam, what is an abhishekam about, what is an archana, and, continuing that spectrum, continuing in that realm. Today's topic, I think, is of interest to young people, especially the intersection of religion and culture, especially in the United States. Our religion, and really more than a religion, is encompasses much more than what we see at the temple and what we read about in the textbooks and things. So can we talk a little bit more about that? That's really the purpose of today's session. And a little plug about the team that's organizing these sessions, Akshayam, the young professionals team here at the New York Ganesh Temple. It is a team of young professionals, as I mentioned. We host these monthly learning series for the benefit of the community, for us to learn together. And we also get involved in volunteering at the temple, in the community. We get involved in educational projects like today's program, along with cultural programs and things like that. And so we invite all young people to get involved in Akshayam, and you know where to find us by going to the temple's website and signing up to be a member today. So without further ado, Dr. Purna Prasad, I'd like to get into this session.
Sure.
With the first being, in our Hindu tradition, where does culture exist and where does religion exist? Are they mutually exclusive, or do they have these overlapping features?
At the outset, congratulations on the 50th celebration of learning, and congratulations to everybody. And thank you for this opportunity to delve into some real practical and pragmatic issues that we all encounter. I am also a student like all of you learning, but I've been given this wonderful opportunity by Akshayam and Abhirami to voice my learnings, and thank you for that. Culture and religion, very important words that are often used in a very loose manner. But if you look at the meaning that the Upanishads, the Vedas give, it's very interesting because they are very specific about it. Culture is what you cultivate. You say corporate culture. Oh, it's the culture in our house to have breakfast at 7:30. The culture in our house is to light a lamp in the evening. The corporate culture is to have a meditation session 10 minutes every day. So culture is what you cultivate. Okay. Now, religion is where you put guardrails in order to safeguard that culture. That's it. Your religion may be to get up in the morning because it is a culture that you have cultivated, look at the sun, and then pray to the sun with the Gayatri mantra. Or it would be you get up in the morning, you go for a run. It is also a culture. Religion and culture are mutually exclusive, but are like two faces of the same coin because one cannot exist without the other. And in the Vedic tradition or the Sanatana Dharma, it gives you enormous latitude and opportunity to cultivate your culture based on certain sound principles and put them into practice so that you're very religious about it. But a culture that is cultivated without understanding the meaning behind it and putting that into a religious realm becomes a blind faith. It's of no use. Or knowing the culture and not practicing it is basically useless. It's like, I know how to build the automobile, but I'm not going to build it. Then it's of no use. Your knowledge is not serving the greater good.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that wonderful foundation as we go explore a little bit more about this topic. So, I think the reason why we came up with this question mainly was, in day to day schooling or going to work, young people always say, I'm really in touch with my culture, but I'm not really connected to my religion. And specifically, since we're talking about Hinduism here, I'm really connected to Indian food, Indian clothing, traditional wear, music, but religion not so much. So trying to understand how basically, as you just mentioned, two sides to the same coin. So that was a great foundation.
And another important thing, as you were talking, I wanted to point out is culture is what is cultivated inside in your mind and intellect and practiced outside with your sense organs, right? It
Definitely.
comes from inside. If you copy somebody, you're just a copycat. But when it comes from inside, I want to do this because I realize the benefit of it, then that culture has a value. Then that value becomes a religion, and that religion has a person practicing it for whom it is going to be extremely beneficial, not only to him, but also to him or her and the society around.
Definitely. And I guess to piggyback back off of that, and maybe a follow up question would be in the Vedas and in the Upanishads and so on and so forth, the religious text, it doesn't only stick with the concepts of certain ritualistic practices, right? It explores a wide range of topics that affect our daily lives, from science, astronomy, medicine, even, and so on and so forth. So the fact that religion, in this case, that the fact that we go back to these Vedic texts and these religious texts to sort of guide us as we practice these daily rituals or weekly rituals, or whatever you have it, it's sort of as a guide to the way that the culture is also formed. So it's not like you go to a temple on Saturday and that's it, and you don't think about it for the rest of the week. So I guess talking more about that, I don't know if you had any points to add on to that.
Absolutely. Those are fantastic things. Whatever we do outside, as I said, comes from inside. Until you have a temple inside your heart and mind, going to a temple constructed of stone and cement is of no use. It's like, having a cassette play, body of knowledge, because the cassette will play as soon as you put play, it will play, or a CD will play, or you can stream online. But when it comes from inside, when the temple is inside, the reflection of the temple is what you see outside, right? uh, the Tirupati, the Badri Dham, the Kedarnath Dham should be inside you, and there are very clear, specific meanings behind what this temple means. Now, the body itself is a temple, right? And we basically do the arati inside by using the flame of knowledge, Gnana Deepa, Gnana Jyoti. And we experience it by seeing it inside through our eyes, hearing the Vedic hymns through our ears, tasting that sumptuous food you talked about because it is offered to that all-encompassing energy which enabled all these different faculties in this universe. A great example is, have a look at the James Webb Telescope pictures. What a beauty that all-encompassing energy, whatever you call it, has created. So it's very important that what you see outside is a reflection of inside. And until you have the temple inside, you will not be seeing the temple outside. It just would be, a vacation or an excursion.
Definitely. So I guess this is a great segue to my next question, which is, young people who were born and brought up outside of India or outside, I guess in this case, in the United States. The temple is really the place where the community congregates, right? We have access to the ritualistic practices. We have access to classes that teach us about our religion and about our culture. Bharatanatyam classes are offered at the Ganesh Temple, music. So you see everything come together. So is this intersection of religion and culture in the United States similar or different to the culture and religion that we have maybe experienced in India? And also, how does that sort of change as the generations go?
Yeah, I don't think there are any differences. It's very similar. The basic connection and the scientific continuum that happens between religion, culture, and the practices are the same. It all depends on how much the individual has understood that and the environment that the individual is brought up, right? Now, a small kid, let's say, an 18-month-old kid, it gets up in the morning and sees the father and mother, you know, praying with folded hands. What do you think it's going to do next? It's going to sit beside the mom and say, folded hands. It doesn't understand why they're doing, but it likes to do it because mommy and daddy are doing. So environment has a humongous impact on that. Whether you are in India or in US or anywhere in the world, what you practice is preached through action, not through words. You could basically advise and tell your students, your kids, and your youngsters as much as you can until you turn blue in your face. But when you practice it, they see it. And that is what is basically imbibed or, sucked in by the youngsters. So the culture, as I said, cultivating with knowledge, and then the religion, the discipline in order to practice this cultivated knowledge that actually is very beneficial. So religion and culture are connected and are practice. And your great question was, do they intersect? Absolutely, they intersect, and doesn't change whether it is in India or in US. There are people in US who actually understand it much better than many people in India. There are people in India who are great, you know, uh, gnanis, knowledgeable people. Unfortunately, nobody listens to them. But there are people in both sides where they understand the meaning behind the practice, the culture, cultivate them, and put them into a disciplined order called the religion and reap the benefits both inside and outside. That is, psychologically, spiritually, and physically.
So thank you for that. I guess tying into a point that you mentioned earlier in the session, Dr. Purna Prasad, with this concept of blind faith. So when you look at the United States with multi ethnic representation and diversity, and you are sitting amongst peers and colleagues that are from different faith-based traditions, and you have conversations about how your traditions might be similar or different to theirs, you're in a position to somehow needing to really understand your religion in a deeper level for you to even speak about it. When it's sort of not being challenged, but being questioned, or being a topic of interest to other people. And so when you talk about young Hindus here, and not really a comparison, but young Hindus in America versus young Hindus in India, I guess it's a different culture that they grow up in as well, because the art of questioning and the importance of questioning. And I think we spoke about this in a previous learning series with you as well, Dr. Purna Prasad, is the importance of questioning for us to be able to get a deeper understanding and appreciation of why we do what we do in religion. And so that, I guess, goes into my next point, which is the concept of spiritual but not religious. I guess it's trending now, or people say spiritual but not affiliated. Does the Sanatana Dharma see them as mutually exclusive? Or are religion and spirituality fundamentally intertwined?
A great question. And just to address your previous point, the environment plays a huge role. Here in the West, in America, questioning is not seen as insulting because of our past, uh, upbringings, environment in India. They usually won't question what the elders said. And people who questioned were the ones who created new realms of knowledge. The people who questioned included the giants in the of philosophy like Shankaracharya, Madhvacharya, and Ramanujacharya. They questioned everything. They would not accept anything. So the art of questioning and the creation of the environment to question is what creates clarity for the self and clarity for the society. That's very important. And there's a whole Upanishad called Shat Prashnopanishad only on the art of questioning between the teacher and the students. So it's very, very important that that art of questioning is there. And what was your second point? You were asking me about the ritualistic, blind ritualistic practices, correct?
Sure. Yeah. Ritualistic practices, understanding the importance, but I think also touching upon spiritual but not religious. People that say that they're spiritual or not, but not affiliated with a religion.
Absolutely. So, your previous point, when you are sitting, let's say I have a consortium or a cohort of Jewish people, of Christian people, of Muslim, of Baha'is, of Persians, and they ask, so why do you like this lamp? Right? We all light a lamp. We light a candle. The Sanatana Dharmis light arati. Right? We all light a lamp. And it basically signifies that energy, that is fire, Agni, and the purest form of offering anything to the Almighty as a gratitude for what we have been blessed with is through Agni, because Agni consumes everything. You can feed Agni as much as you want, and the indweller of Agni, Narayana, eats it, no problem, whether it is good, bad, or ugly, as long as it is fed with devotion. So this type of an understanding helps bring that harmony. Now, the spirituality and religion. Spirituality, as the word itself says, is the spirit behind a belief, right? What is the spirit behind science? The spirit behind science is observation, understanding through observation, and deduction of generalizable principles. The spirit behind religion is something which is very internal. Here in science, we are looking at external entities. Here, internal, which means to say to understand the self. Hopefully, once we understand the self, we will be able to understand the Supreme. That is the spirit behind philosophy. Spirituality is the practice of understanding the self. The yoga, as Krishna says, Gnana Yoga and then Karma Yoga. But for both this, you need a fundamental yoga, the Bhakti Yoga. You have to surrender to that knowledge in an unbiased way in order to understand. That is the spirit behind philosophy. So, philosophy not understood through the spirit behind it, that gets converted into a religious practice, just becomes a mechanical practice, right? In majority of our Hindu culture, it is done because of the fear that the Almighty God would curse all of us, because he doesn't have anything else to do but to curse us. We have to get up in the morning, we have to do this, we have to say these mantras because my father told me, his father told him, his father told him, if you don't do this, you are going to be destined to hell. You're going to cultivate a lot of bad karma and papa. None of the Upanishads say this. This is a complete blind way of putting fear instead of clarity, in order to get a ritual to be practiced without understanding the reason behind it. Vedavyasara basically makes a great comment in the Bhagavata. He says, if anything you believe in and you practice is not practical or pragmatic, throw it away. That's it. If it is not practical or pragmatic, what do you mean practical or pragmatic? If it is not useful to the society, throw it away. It does not matter. So the Vedic spirituality is so beautiful. It is based on service to others, on service to humanity, and that is what it calls as service to God. So just following the religious blind practices without understanding the spirit behind it is like solving 100 quadratic equations without knowing the meaning behind that equation as to why we are doing what we are doing. I think you made that point. Why are we doing this? And if you're convinced, it's very clearly said that it is of no use to you, don't do it. If praying in the morning becomes a botheration, stop it. If praying in the morning becomes an enjoyment, then you don't have to worry. You automatically do it. So that is the difference between spirit and religion. Religion should come. Your disciplined practice should come after understanding the spirit behind that practice. Spirit is the science behind it as to why we are doing what we're doing.
That's quite fantastic of an explanation. And I think just to drive home the point, maybe as a follow-up, is when we interact with new Akshayam members or young people in the temple or in the community, a lot of narratives come up in which they say, our parents told us to do this. We have to go to the temple on these days. We have to do this and this and this. And so therefore, when they come into university and maybe they're living away from their parents, those practices generally die off because there's nobody sort of grounding them or, telling them to do it. And then they sort of go through this transformation on their own, through their own experiences, that there is some sort of, mental relief that I get from doing that. We didn't necessarily appreciate that when our parents told us to, but let's explore what that means in our personal lives. And they sort of come back into this sort of like a curve, right? They sort of come back into this, I should say, sinusoidal curve, right? After they grow a little bit older. And so we do see misinterpretation and misinformation as to you must do this for this reason, and no blame here to anybody, but maybe that's the way that the parents have learned or the grandparents have learned, and so they simply passed it on here. But the importance of defining, or not everything has a definition, but in terms of religion and spirituality, I think when you limit things into definitions, it sort of prevents us from seeing the gray spaces, right? Which allows all the spirituality to come up. And I guess to a follow up on that, the Hindu religion, it's much more than ritualistic worship. And so can we talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's a question a lot of young people have. Is there more to the Hindu religion than ritualistic worship that we see at home or at the temple?
A lot more. And you mentioned it just in your previous sentence. Transformation of the self based on the experience and the wisdom of the ancients is exactly what Sanatana Dharma or the Hindu religion tells, right? So when you go through the Upanishads, it says, the Rishi says, this has been my experience when I basically saw a serpent or a tree. The next thing is, go ahead, try it out. That notion of inquisitiveness is built in the human psyche. God has given that in us. Because as soon as my friend calls and say, hey, you know what? There is a new pizza place in the corner of the street. Would you like to try? My immediate answer is yes. Same line of thought, same taste. Hey, you know what? Try this. Try to sit in the morning, close your eyes, and see if there is something inside. Oh boy, there's a whole world inside. Much bigger, much more intense, and much more joyful than what we experience outside. So, in Hindu religion, the most important thing is the formation of the self, the discovery of the self through experiential learning, as you pointed out. You heard your dad and mom say, get up in the morning, take a shower, and then sit down for 5 minutes. Light that lamp and sit down. In the beginning, you said, okay, I'll do it because dad and mom said it. Then you're on your own in your college, in your university. And then you say, you know what? Let me try that now. That is when the self-discovery starts. That is how Acharya Shankara discovered the new body of knowledge. Acharya Ramanuja discovered the new body of knowledge. And Acharya Madhva discovered the new body of knowledge. It was self-discovery. But they were so good, so generous, they exposed and documented their learnings based on the Vedic spirituality and gave it to us and say, here is my experience. Go ahead, you experience it yourself. That's the meaning of Bhaja Govindam. He doesn't tell you you have to pray to God. He said, pray and see, maybe it's useful. Try that pizza at the corner, the new pizza place. You know, the veggie pizza is really good. He uses some incredible cheese. Go ahead and try it. Until you experience it, you will not learn. And that is made very clear in the Upanishad. No matter where you go, the greatest guru you get, to your point, which actually you mentioned, you have to experience it. If you don't like it, if you are not convinced, leave it. But if you are convinced, reap the benefits of it. That's what, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Look, you are in a learning mode, and he calls it a battlefield. Kuru Kshetra, that is where you action, the whole arena, environment of action. He says, Hatova prapsasi swargam. You know what? If you die, you get the swarga. Jitvava bhokshase mahim. If you are alive, you will enjoy the kingdom. In both cases, you're gaining. That is why the entire Bhagavad Gita starts with Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre. Only in Dharma there is never a loss. Only in Dharma there is never a defeat. Only in Dharma there is no unhappiness. We can only understand this by experiencing through our life, going through trials and tribulations, but always remembering we are in training. The more we train, the better we become.
Wow. Wow. Yes, definitely. And thank you for that explanation. I think one of our viewers just wants to see if we can clarify the name of the Upanishad that you mentioned that talks about the art of questioning. If you can possibly just repeat that for her, please.
Yeah, it is Shat Prashnopanishad. And in Shat Prashnopanishad, 6 disciples come to Guru Pipalada, a great Gnani, and then tell him, we want to learn from you. Then he asks a question: are you sure I am the right teacher?
Hmm.
And then he says, I have to be sure that you are the right disciples. So let's take a year in order to decipher the usefulness and validity of you as the disciples, me as the teacher. If both of us agree that this is a positive action, we shall pursue education.
Definitely. Awesome. So I guess our next question as a follow-up is, Dr. Purna Prasad, you mentioned this experience that is needed, right? This experiential journey, this path. So for the young people that don't have the luxury of being told about the meaning of certain practices as they are, expected to do, how can young people connect better to a ritualistic practice if they're not exposed to the meaning growing up? And if you can't necessarily Google things to find accurate meanings. So what is the first step that a young person can take if they are ready for this sort of experiential journey, but it's like sort of like a world out there without a guide, and maybe getting a guru might be difficult, or however the procedures might revolve around that. If they're in the middle of nowhere and they don't have access to resources, how do they start really?
Yeah, I'm going to be a little raw here. Do not underestimate yourself. You are exposed to millions and millions of inputs from your 5 senses. You have learned a lot observing the family, the environment, interacting with people. You are the most intelligent being that is there in this universe. So trust yourself first. When you trust yourself, then you basically start questioning things that you experience. There is what is called as gut feeling. When you listen to that gut feeling, it actually answers the question. You have to meditate on every question you have. Seeking a guru is the most important thing. If you are blessed to find the right guru, sure. As you said, not everybody finds the right guru in the first attempt. Looking at the literature or Googling it absolutely starts giving you different avenues of thought. Do not accept anything blindly without convincing yourself. Do not always expect somebody else to convince you. If you are always expecting somebody else to convince you, the Upanishad says you have no self respect. You are the most evolved creature in this universe. You have a thinking brain and articulating capacity of the intellect, and that memory shell that can actually retain bits of knowledge forever. So, that meditation, the importance of meditation is deep thinking. One has to inculcate because one has the capacity to. Let's say I'm asked to come to the temple every Friday. In the beginning, I don't want, because Friday is my, I go and play basketball, or I go and then party with my friends. There's nothing wrong in it. But don't come to the temple just because you're forced to. Come to the temple with a very inquisitive eye and say, why am I coming here? what is happening here? And why do people go to the temple for thousands of years? They are not fools. There is a reason. Nobody does anything without a reason. When you start self-discovering, and when you put that self capacity that you have, you will start finding some fantastic answers. And that is the whole meditation. That is actually Gnana Yoga. Everything is right in front of you. And as my Guruji, Dr. Bananjay Govindacharya, used to say, the answer is right before or right in front of the question. It's right beside the question. Because there is an answer, a question actually originated. Without an answer, there cannot be a question. There cannot be a question without an answer. The thing is, we might not have found it. We are still working on it. But denying that there is no answer is not wisdom. So, first, respect the self. Develop that scientific temperament in order to find, as we said, what the spirit behind all these practices are. Not only just, the Hindu practices, any religion. Why do they do what they do? When majority of the world population is following a certain principle, maybe religion, what is the reason? Yeah, you can say they're blind, but do you understand it? Once you start digging, you will start finding the pearls of wisdom.
Wow, definitely. And I guess there's also added benefit that when you come up with a question yourself, the answer sticks a little bit longer than if somebody presented the question to you. Like neurologically, the way that the brain works, when you come up with a thought yourself, whether it be a question or a statement, it just gets the stimulus gets triggered for a longer period of time. And so I guess as a segue into that, Dr. Purna Prasad, to the next question is, when we enter the temple and when we give tours, right, to people from other communities, or even to students from our community, a lot of people have said, and I know from personal experience being on these tours and giving these tours, that when they come into the temple, they feel different. They don't know what it is, but they feel better. They feel more positive. They feel more recharged. They don't know what it is. They can't put a pulse on it. But just one way path from Ganesha Sannidhi through one way, maybe a clockwise rotation, or even if it's not that, just exiting through the Navagraha Sannidhi and going out, they just feel like something is different. They can't put a pulse on it. So the experience of just sitting in the temple can bring a lot to young people or older individuals or whoever it is, even any soul, really, that they say. Even a dog, if you bring a dog into the temple, or a cat or whatever, or a cow, they just feel better. But the similar experience when you're asked to engage in ritualistic practice. So, is there any benefit when you are engaging in a ritualistic practice and you don't know the meaning of why you're doing it? So, if, like, for example, if I go and observe an abhishekam, do I get the full benefit if I don't know what's going on? Or is it just simply sitting there is enough?
So, it's an excellent question. Is simply sitting there enough? Have I come here to just sit here or to gain something from this? Have I come here to just sit here or to question? Not with a maleficence or any like that, with a need to know why they are doing this. So I come and sit here. They are chanting in a language I don't understand. But why is my inner self getting into almost like a very peaceful environment? There is a reason behind it. The reason is vibrations. If you look at the Vedic perspective, the Vedic scientists, the way they describe the creation of this whole universe, they actually are very, very clear about it. Through vibrations, matter is created. Through vibrations, environment is created. Because every sound syllable you utter doesn't die. It may diminish in amplitude that is required for us to perceive it, but it never diminishes because it's a thought. A vibration turns into a thought lodges in your memory, and it is always there. A great example is a good song. A good song that you have heard 30 years ago can be recollected like that because the vibrations of that song is still alive. When you enter into, let us say, a ritualistic function like a homa, right? They are offering something to the fire. They're offering the ghee to the fire. I don't know what the spirit behind it is, but I sit here and I see all these people in a disciplined path. The problem is the reason we lose the beauty behind it is we start questioning, do they understand? When you start worrying about the others, you stop worrying about the self. The growth of the self ceases. When the growth of the self ceases, then knowledge ceases. It's very important. So when I go and say, I don't know anything about it, let me observe. They are actually singing in tune. They are in symphony. They are in synchrony. And it just makes me feel good. That itself is the first growth. So why do I do this? Whenever I'm disturbed, I come into this place and there is somebody saying these wonderful hymns. And then I understand that they are offering their gratitude to an idol. With these hymns. Very interesting. Why an idol? What is there in the idol? Nobody basically worships a stone. Nobody. Even a deranged person doesn't worship a stone. There should be something inside. This type of a scientific temperament is what creates that vibration. And this vibration is constant. That's why when you enter a temple, all the Vedic hymns, the vibrations, those musical notes, the Sama Veda, Sama means music, Sama Veda, the Atharva Veda, the Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda, that have been practiced, perfected, and tuned for tens of thousands of years, are repeated day in and day out. Every time that happens, all those atoms and molecules are carrying this vibration. You can hear them if you tune your mind to it. And every time the purohits do it, then the environment of calmness pursues. That is why when you enter it, you almost go into a calmness. Great example, you go near an ocean, what happens? The sound of the ocean is constant because the ocean is basically saying the Samaveda. When you go near the falls are seeing the Sama because it is their song. You go into a forest, the birds, the animals are actually singing the Samaveda. That's why when you go into a forest, it's very calm. You go into Yosemite, it's very calm. You come into a temple, it's very calm. That's it. It's the vibration that sustains in the environment that calms you down. Then hopefully you'll have the inquisitive wherewithal to say why, what's happening here, why am I so calm, why is that every time I come and sit here, it just I enjoy this serene environment. That is the starting point. Then we can start about understanding it, trying to know the meaning and everything else. But the very first point is enjoy your experience. Don't worry about understanding anything, right? Like the children, when the small kids are crying, what does the mother do? Sing to it. You think it understands? Absolutely not. What does it comprehend? The vibrations. And that's what is talked about in Samaveda.
That's brilliant. So I guess it's amazing how this conversation is flowing because everything is so intertwined and linked to this one fundamental concept, which is self discovery, really. And whatever speaks to you, we just have to tune into that frequency. And that frequency might be different amongst different people and different souls, but fundamentally, they're all aligned to your inner soul. So that's wonderful. So I guess this is a great segue into my next question, as you probably have anticipated, which is a lot of us who go out for schooling and we growing up at the near Ganesh Temple, we always had the opportunity to go to the temple whenever we wanted to. But when we leave New York or wherever people may be, and that's this one temple that we connect with and makes us feel good, then we feel drained and we're waiting to go back to New York to visit our parents, to go back to the temple and get recharged for the next semester, whatever the frequency it might be. But now the COVID pandemic has exposed us to this underlying symptoms of being in this virtual world. And it might have, we might have seen signs and symptoms before the pandemic, but really during the pandemic, we've been thrown into this virtual world. And we kind of understand when people say, when you don't have access to a temple, when you don't have access to these vibrations, we feel lost. So how will these Hindu practices, looking into the future in a more and more virtual world, how will these Hindu practices adapt or provide alternatives to age-old traditions that traditionally happened within temples?
I think it's an excellent question. And as Guru Bananjay used to tell me as he was teaching me, the answer is right there. You told me something very important. Let's say you leave New York to go to a university and you're longing to come to the Ganesh temple. You know why you're longing to come to Ganesh temple? You're longing because you know what it can do for you. What does that mean? That means to say it is right inside you. The Ganesh temple that is outside in structure has gone into you, has gone internal into you. You have internalized it. And being humans, we are full of desires. We not only want to enjoy the internal comfort it gives, but also we want our external senses to experience the Ganesh temple. That's why I want to run here. External senses. We want to see, Ganesha in his structural form. We want to smell the incense. We want to really feel the arati and the flowers. We want to smell the flowers. And of course, we want to eat the prasad. We want to hear soothing vibrations of the Vedic hymns. That's why the Vedic rishis were very smart. They say you can experience it even though you may not be physically there. Close your eyes, sit for 10 minutes. You will be at the Ganesh temple without having to spend time on the road or fly. When we inculcate this art of meditation, art of enjoying the internal capture that we have done, we are not like camera. We have captured it, but the beauty is this is a multimedia camera. This is a video camera that's got something that none of the technology has. That is the capacity to self experience. A camera is just a static thing, it doesn't have a self experience. Whereas the human senses can actually self experience. So when we inculcate this, it doesn't matter whether we are physically, you know, in Ganesh temple, but wherever we are able to see Ganesha and hear the hymns and smell the flowers and enjoy the food just by closing our external senses and opening the internal senses, because the recording has happened inside. None of it has happened outside. The entire recording mechanism is inside. And that is what meditation is. So that, materialistic things gives you the knowledge, but you need to be able to extract that knowledge, that experience inside and internalize it. When you internalize it, you experience it. As you're experiencing it, you will understand yourself better. That is basically the realization of the self.
That was super powerful. And I think if I can throw in a little story, when we were at the temple last month, when we were in New York, and a young family came in, and I remember seeing this young family about 7, 8 months ago. And the question that the father had, they had two small kids, and the question that the father had, the whole family was from the States, and he said, "What is the fastest puja that I can do to come in and get whatever I need and to get out, because I need to, I need to do other things on the Saturday." And so, yeah, I mean, we were telling him about the archana, that probably would be the fastest thing, as opposed to like an abhishekam and sitting down. And so I was like thinking, and I was asking him as he was about to leave, I'm like, what was the reason for was this the fastest thing as a parameter because you had to do other things, or did you not know the meaning of why you had to do the archana? Because if you just wanted to go in and go out, then you don't even need to do an archana. You just have to come in, do your rounds, and go out, or you can stand outside. Even why even come in, right? So I was trying to understand the thought process behind it. And I actually saw him last month along with his family. And this time he sat for the whole Abhishekam. I remember it was like a Sunday morning, right? He sat for the whole Abhishekam with his family. And I said, "I don't know if you remember me, but I definitely remember you." And I don't know if, what we spoke about. And he said, "Yeah, I kind of got the wrong idea before, like express pujas because express schedule. But what I ended up realizing is that God wasn't losing. It was me, because I had a shortened amount of positive experience compared to whatever I could experience now at the Abhishek, because it's a longer period of time. And so I thought of it the wrong way. And so when they answer their own questions, this concept of how can I do the puja faster? How can I do this faster? Lack of materials and resources is one thing, but lack of time is another, right? And lack of intention. And so I guess that also comes to my next point, and I guess our final question for today, because I know we have a lot to talk about, but maybe we can have the next session to answer more questions.
Sure.
But I definitely wanted to ask you this one question, which was the importance of faith leaders and Hindu temples in the United States to be more aware of the needs and the mind space of young Hindus they're wanting to question in order to preserve our traditions in the West. Because here we are trying our best to do whatever we can to preserve what was passed down to us. But how can faith leaders in Hindu temples be more aware of young people and their interests and their needs, and establish better platforms to cater to these interests in the future?
Yeah. When you call yourself a leader, you should first be a servant. Krishna says that one who cannot be a servant can never be a leader or a teacher, because leader is all about service. The latest research shows the highest form of leadership is servant leadership, and it's taught in the universities. That needs to be internalized. The faith leaders should become mentors. The way you become mentor is by walking the talk, number one. Number two, faith absolutely needs economical support. But when the economics of administering a faith becomes more important than the faith itself, and building of buildings and structures become more important than the substance, then we lose the spirit behind what we are trying to do. And that's what is happening to the Hindu faith right now, unfortunately. If you look at the great leaders, Acharya Shankara, Acharya Ramanuja, Acharya Madhva, they did not touch money. Their sole mission was to spread the wisdom of the ancients and the wisdom of the Vedas. Yes, in this day and age, you need the economics and the structure for it. but we need to make sure that our faith leaders do not forget that the education of the mind, the empowering of the self for each citizen is the most important thing. And in the Vedas, that's the reason it says Satyam Vada Dharmam Chara, right? They have to help us understand what the truth is, how to speak the truth. They have to help us understand what the greater good is and how to discharge actions that enable the greater good. But unfortunately, that's not happening. It's suffering, and it's time that as you know, the students of spirituality and the religious practices that many of us have developed because of spirituality, we stress to our leaders, you need to cater to the young minds. You need to direct them so violence is eliminated. Look at what's happening now, the gun violence. With the right type of spiritual education through the spiritual leaders, creating the environment, violence has no place in this world. So the leaders will have to address the societal problems, but use the tools of spirituality in order to prevent them, not solve them, prevent them, because prevention is better than cure. And that would be my humble request to the spiritual leaders.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so very much, Dr. Purna Prasad, for your time, for your wealth of knowledge and experience that you're shared with not only Akshayam, but the temple community at large. And interestingly, so many different individuals from different countries are also tuning into these learning series. We get messages from Singapore and Malaysia as well, along with some new members joined in from Denmark, Netherlands even, wanting to be part of some team like Akshayam. And so I think a lot of people do benefit from these sessions, and we want to thank you for that. And it's always a pleasure to have you on. And we also, when you're here, we want to also say we want to welcome everybody to the Maha Kumbhabhishekam that's happening at the temple. And the Kumbhabhishekam, for those that are unfamiliar, is a reconsecration ceremony that takes place roughly every 12 years. And so it's going to happen this year from August 31st to September 7th. And Ganesh Chaturthi will continue up until September, the 11th of September. And so I think it's a great experiential platform for people to come in to really give it a try. And to, I think, incredible amount of vibrations will be generated during this Kumbhabhishekam time, and you can experience it for yourself. With that, I want to know if Dr. Purna Prasad, do you have any closing remarks?
It says that what we just did is what is called as Gnana Yagna, where we got together and then did a deep meditation, deep dive, deep thinking, trying to understand those very, holy experiences, spiritual experiences. We should continue this, and the originating center is the temple, not only the physical form of the temple in New York, but hopefully it will be the temple which is your very heart. And thank you so much for this opportunity. More to come.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Namaste.